Let me tell you about someone and see if this hits close to home. They just got promoted to a six-figure salary, $105,000 a year to be exact. They remember when breaking into six figures felt like the finish line. Once they hit that number, everything would click into place financially. They'd finally feel comfortable, finally feel secure. Finally stop stressing about money every single month, except that's not what happened. Somehow making $105,000 feels almost identical to when they were making $65,000 3 years ago. Same stress, same tight budget, same anxiety when unexpected expenses pop up. Same feeling of never quite getting ahead. They're making 40 grand more per year and they can't figure out where the hell it's all going. So what's actually happening here? How is it possible that a massive salary increase feels like it changed absolutely nothing? My name is Mike, and I've become obsessed with understanding why six-figure earners are living paycheck to paycheck, just like people making half that amount. If you've ever gotten a big raise and thought, where did all that extra money go? Make sure to hit that subscribe button because we're about to expose the invisible system that's stealing your salary. Increases before you even see them. Now, before we break down exactly where your money is disappearing to, let me show you what we're really dealing with here. There's this pervasive myth in American culture that once you break into six figures, you've made it. You're rich, you're comfortable, you're financially set. The reality is brutally different. According to recent data from the Federal Reserve, nearly 36% of people earning over $100,000 per year report living paycheck to paycheck. $100,000. That's not a typo. People making double or triple the median income are struggling just as hard as people making $50,000. But here's where it gets really wild. When researchers ask these high earners where their money goes, most of them genuinely don't know. They see the gross salary, they know it's a big number, but somehow their bank account tells a completely different story. The disconnect between what you earn and what you feel like you earn has never been wider, and almost nobody is talking about the real reasons why. The truth is, there's a systematic wealth extraction happening at every income level. And the higher you climb, the more sophisticated the extraction becomes. And understanding this system isn't just interesting. It's critical to actually building wealth instead of just appearing to build wealth. Let's start with the most obvious but least understood wealth killer. Taxes. And I don't just mean that you pay more taxes when you earn more. The way the progressive tax system interacts with salary growth is genuinely shocking when you actually run the numbers. Most people think if they get a $40,000 raise, they're taking home $40,000 more per year. That is catastrophically wrong. Here's what actually happens. Let's say you're making $65,000 and you get bumped up to $105,000. That's a $40,000 increase on paper. Sounds life-changing, right? Now let's calculate what you actually take home. At $65,000, your effective federal tax rate is roughly 12 to 15%. Add in state taxes, let's say 5% plus FICA at 765%. You're looking at a combined rate of around 25%. So out of that $65,000, you're taking home roughly $48,750. Now, at $105,000, here's where the trap springs. That extra $40,000 doesn't get taxed at 25%. It gets taxed at your new marginal rate, which is now 22% federal. Your state taxes might jump to 6 or 7% depending on your brackets. FICA stays the same on the first chunk, but the overall effective rate on that raise is crushing. You're looking at 35 to 40% of that raise disappearing immediately. So that $40,000 raise, you actually take home maybe $24,000 to $26,000 of it. You just lost $14,000 to $16,000 and you haven't even spent a dollar yet. But wait, here's where it gets even more insane. At higher income levels, you start losing access to certain tax credits and deductions. The earned income tax credit starts phasing out. Child tax credits get reduced. Student loan interest deductions disappear. Retirement contribution deduction limits change. There are all these stealth taxes that kick in as you earn more. Things most people never factor in when they're excited about a promotion. I've met people who got a $15,000 raise, and their actual take-home increase was less than $7,000 for the year. That's less than $600 a month, less than $140 per week. That life-changing raise turned into dinner money, but taxes are just the beginning. The second and perhaps more insidious wealth killer is lifestyle inflation, and it happens so gradually that most people don't even notice they're doing it. Here's how it works. When you make $65,000, you live a certain lifestyle. You rent a decent apartment, you drive a reliable used car. You eat out occasionally, you take modest vacations. Your life is calibrated to $65,000. Then you get promoted to $105,000. Suddenly, you qualify for things you didn't qualify for before. The bank will now approve you for a much bigger mortgage. Car dealerships will happily lease you a luxury vehicle. Credit card companies raise your limits without you asking. Your entire financial universe expands and everyone around you expects you to expand into it. Your coworkers at the new salary level are living a certain way. They're in nicer apartments or bigger houses, they're driving newer cars, they're talking about their Peloton and their meal kit subscriptions and their weekend trips to wine country. And here's the psychological trap, you feel pressure to match that lifestyle. Not because you're shallow, but because humans are social creatures and we calibrate our sense of normal based on our peer group. So what happens? You move to a nicer place. Your rent goes from $1,800 to $2,800. That's an extra $12,000 per year. You upgrade your car because the old one feels embarrassing in the company parking lot. That's another $400 a month or $4,800 annually. You start eating out more because that's what people do for lunch meetings and networking. At $3,000 per year, you upgrade your gym membership, your clothes, your phone, your subscriptions, death by 1,000 small upgrades. Within 18 months of getting that raise, your fixed costs have expanded to consume almost all of that extra take-home income. You're making $40,000 more, but spending $35,000 more, and you barely noticed it happening. This is why that study found 36% of six-figure earners living paycheck to paycheck. They're not financially illiterate, they're responding rationally to social pressure and lifestyle calibration. Then there's what I call the expectation economy, and this is where things get really dark. Once you break into certain salary levels, there are just assumed expenses that come with the territory. Nobody tells you about these explicitly, but they're very real. Let me give you some examples. At $65,000, nobody expects you to pick up the tab when you go out with friends. At $105,000, there's this subtle pressure that you should treat people occasionally. You're doing well now. Over a year, that's thousands in social obligation spending. At $65,000, you can say no to destination weddings or expensive bachelor parties. At $105,000, those no's feel cheap. You're expected to attend, to contribute to group gifts, to participate fully. The gift economy changes too. Holiday gifts, birthday presents, wedding gifts, baby shower contributions. At lower salaries, you can give modest, thoughtful gifts. At higher salaries, there's an unspoken minimum. You're spending $150 on wedding gifts instead of $75. $100 on birthday gifts instead of $50. It adds up faster than you'd believe. Then there's the charity and donation pressure. Once you're making six figures, you start getting asks from your alma mater, from local charities, from friends running marathons for causes, from colleagues' kids' fundraisers. You can't say no to everything without looking like a selfish jerk, so you say yes to enough of them that it's another few thousand per year. Professional expenses explode too. At $65,000, you could get away with basic work clothes. At $105,000, you're expected to look the part. Better suits, better shoes, better accessories, professional development courses, industry conference tickets, networking event fees, LinkedIn Premium, all the little things that professionals are just supposed to have. Add it all up, and you're looking at another $8,000 to $12,000 per year in expectation spending that didn't exist at your previous salary level. And the insane part, most people don't even categorize this as spending. They see it as just the cost of living at their income level. It's not optional in their minds, it's required. But perhaps the single biggest wealth killer for high earners is housing. And this deserves its own section because it's the place where salary increases go to die. Here's the mechanism, and it's virtually identical across every major city in America. When you make $65,000, you can afford a certain level of housing. Let's say you qualify for a $250,000 mortgage using traditional lending ratios. You buy a modest starter home or rent a decent apartment in an okay neighborhood. You're fine with it because it's what people at your income level do. Then you get bumped to $105,000. Suddenly, you qualify for a $400,000 mortgage. The bank is thrilled to lend to you. Real estate agents are showing you beautiful homes in better neighborhoods with better school districts. And here's where the trap is set. You're not just competing against other individual buyers anymore. You're competing against every other dual-income household that also just broke into six figures. Every young professional couple making $100,000 plus is bidding on the same houses in the same good school districts. What happens to prices? They get bid up to exactly the maximum that six-figure earners can afford. That house that should cost $320,000. Based on historical price-to-income ratios gets bid up to $420,000. Because that's what people with your income can technically afford according to the bank. You're in a bidding war with people making the same money you make, and everyone loses except the seller. You end up with a mortgage payment that consumes 35 to 40% of your gross income instead of the traditional 25 to 28%. So that extra $40,000 in salary, a huge chunk of it just went to a more expensive house, and you're not getting a proportionally better house. You're getting the same relative quality of house that someone at your income level has always gotten. You just paid 60% more for it because housing prices inflated to match salary increases. This is the ultimate wealth extraction. Your salary went up 60%, housing prices went up 65%. You're working harder, earning more, and ending up in the exact same relative financial position. It's a treadmill that speeds up every time you run faster. Let me put this all together with real numbers because this is where it gets absolutely devastating. Take our example person who went from $65,000 to $105,000. That's a $40,000 raise. Sounds life-changing. Let's see what actually happens to it. Federal, state, and FICA taxes on that extra $40,000. Approximately negative take-home increase. Upgraded housing from $1,800 rent to $2,600 mortgage. Negative $9,600 per year. Upgraded car from paid-off beater to $450 per month lease. Negative $5,400. Lifestyle inflation, restaurants, clothes, subscriptions, gym. Negative $4,000. Expectation, economy, gifts, donations, social obligations. Negative $3,000. Professional expenses, wardrobe, conferences, networking. Negative $2,000 total. You've now spent $24,000 of your $25,000 take-home increase. You're left with $1,000 per year. That's $83 per month. That's less than $3 per day. A $40,000 raise netted you $3 per day in actual increased financial flexibility. That's not financial progress, that's running in place on a treadmill that's tilted uphill. And here's the truly insane part. Most people in this situation don't even realize it happened. They just know they're making six figures and still stressed about money. They think they're doing something wrong, they think they're bad with money. They don't realize they're caught in a systematic extraction system, designed to capture salary increases before they can be converted into actual wealth. So what's the solution? How do you actually benefit from a salary increase instead of watching it evaporate? The answer is what I call the salary freeze mindset, and it's the opposite of what most people do. Here's how it works. When you get a raise, you don't touch your lifestyle. Not for 6 months, not for a year, preferably not ever. If you were living on $65,000 and you get bumped to $105,000, you keep living like you make $65,000. Every single dollar of that take-home increase goes straight into wealth building. Not later, not after you enjoy it a little. Immediately and automatically, you set up automatic transfers the day your raise takes effect. The money gets routed to retirement accounts, investment accounts, debt payoff before you ever see it in your checking account. This requires something that most people find nearly impossible. You have to resist lifestyle inflation while your peer group is embracing it. You have to keep driving that paid-off car when you could afford the lease. You have to stay in the smaller house when you qualify for the bigger one. You have to keep packing lunch when your coworkers are going out. You have to become comfortable with being the understated person in your income bracket. And here's what nobody tells you: within 5 to 7 years of this approach, something magical happens. Those investments start generating serious returns. That extra $25,000 per year you were investing is now $150,000 to $200,000 earning its own returns. Compound interest takes over, and suddenly you have something your peers don't have: actual wealth instead of the appearance of wealth. You reach a point where you could stop working for a year and be fine. Where you could take a lower paying job you actually enjoy. Where an emergency doesn't become a crisis, where you have options. That's what the raise was supposed to buy you in the first place: freedom and flexibility. But you only get there by refusing to let your expenses rise with your income. I want to leave you with this: the salary illusion isn't about the number on your paycheck. It's about the gap between what you earn and what you keep. Our economy is brilliantly designed to close that gap at every income level. Taxes, lifestyle inflation, social pressure, housing bidding wars, they all work together to ensure that earning more doesn't mean keeping more. The people who actually build wealth aren't the ones earning the most. They're the ones who figured out how to widen the gap between earning and spending. They're the ones who got the raise and acted like they didn't. They're the ones driving the 7-year-old car to their $120,000 job. They look broke. They're rich. They're just not showing you that $100,000 salary can feel like $50,000, or it can feel like financial freedom. The difference isn't the number, it's what you do with it. Now you know where it's all going. The question is, are you going to let it keep going there? If this video changed how you think about your salary, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe, because next week we're breaking down why your 401k might be the worst investment you're making. Trust me, you'll want to see that one.